Well, I've just recently hit 1,000 hours for each of the languages that I'm focusing on, and I wanted to go and just create a quick video of going over my different stats, where I'm at currently, and just to give you sort of an idea of what you can expect once you hit these kinds of numbers. Now, I do want to mention though, for the languages Spanish and French, I did have a little bit of exposure to those in the past. Now, with Spanish, I actually had taken Spanish classes like during school, so like elementary school, high school, a little bit in college, so I did have some familiarity with Spanish, but not enough to use the language. And I also used Duolingo on and off, but never really made a ton of progress. With French, now French is a heritage language for me. My mother actually speaks French, and I have a lot of people on my mother's side of the family that speaks French. And I've also taken a little bit of French in school, but not that much. So I did have some familiarity with French, but again, not that much, and certainly not enough to be able to like utilize the language. Now with Esperanto is actually pretty interesting, is because this is the language I probably started off from about as close as nothing as you can get, as compared to Spanish and French. But even though I was starting off from a further back position with Esperanto, I was able to close that gap very quickly, and now Esperanto has gone on to become my strongest language. That's because Esperanto is a constructed language, and it was made in such a way where it will be easy for the average person to be able to learn that language, as opposed to like a natural language like Spanish or French. Now, as you see here, I do have a little bit of time into Portuguese as well as Italian. Now, the reason why that's there is because I was reading a book at one point, a comparative grammar book, which teaches you about Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Italian at the same time. So it goes over all of these different grammar points. So it was through that book that I was able to get a little bit of exposure to Portuguese and Italian, but those aren't the main languages we're focusing on. For me, it's just Esperanto, Spanish, and French. So just wanted to have a quick note about that. So as you can see here, like if we don't consider the French as well as the Italian, the distribution, like the amount of time that I put between each language, is fairly even for the most part. You see, it's not exact, like for, as you can see here, Esperanto currently does have the most with 30.7, Spanish is 30.3, and then French is last place with 32%. Part of the reason that's the case is because I had been putting a lot more time into Esperanto as opposed to French. Actually, at one point, Spanish had the most amount of time out of all the languages, but not too long ago, because I was putting more time into Esperanto as opposed to French, as opposed to Spanish as well as French, I was able to go and surpass the amount of time I put into the language. So, yeah, Esperanto actually reached the number one spot like not too long ago. I want to say like about like a few weeks ago or so. So I just wanted to make a quick note in regards to that. Also I want to show you, guys, like the amount of time that I spend on input and output. So the way that I do my language learning is that I focus primarily on increasing my listening as well as my reading comprehension. So that's broadly referred to as input. And after I go and I develop a relatively high ability to read and listen to the language, then I go and I start focusing on my output, which would be speaking as well as writing. So my goal for next year is to start focusing on output for French as well as Spanish. But for now, all of my output has been entirely actually Esperanto. So like I'm doing some speaking as well as writing. Now the writing part for Esperanto is a little bit misleading because I don't record everything that I write. Like outside the stuff that I've recorded, like I also do a bit of chatting in like chat rooms and stuff. So I don't go out of my way to record that time because that would just it probably wouldn't even be worth the effort. Like how would I even go about calculating it? So the writing amount is definitely undercounted. But we don't, I try not to worry about that. I just track whatever I can track and not try to worry about everything else. But like I said, yeah, this is just showing like an aggregate of everything I've done across all three languages. But afterwards I want to go and just break down each language with you. So we're going to jump into that. So now we're going to look into Esperanto. So this is a language currently, which I had the most amount of time in, 1,046. I wanted to wait until I had 1,000 hours in each of the languages before I made this video. So that's why Spanish and French have a bit more than 1,000 hours. But now that all languages are at 1,000 hours, now I was finally able to make the video. So right now I'm putting in about 1.4 hours per day. See, this is the current time period about how much time I'm putting in Esperanto. This is the breakdown of activities. Now the half attention listening is a bit overestimated across all the different languages, because when I was tracking my time previously using the app Toggle, I didn't really make a distinction between free flow listening, which is just listening, but you're still paying attention, but you're not really trying to understand everything, as well as have attention listening, which is like you're listening, but you're doing other stuff, like you're sort of distracted. So that's why the half attention listening is a bit bigger than it should be, because it's not all of it is half attention. But I try not to get too worried about like the time per activity. I do think this is useful to look at from time to time, like so you can get an idea of like what is it that you're doing and what you're focusing on for your language learning, because it could also help you with spotting particular weaknesses, or maybe you can go and like introduce some new activities into your routines, to work on certain things. What I do find really useful is the time per skill. Now this one is fairly accurate, like for the most part. So as you can see, I've put in like most of my time into listening with 600 hours, and then I have a reading with 246. About 164 with speaking. Speaking is actually pretty accurate. And, I have 64 hours recorded for writing. So one of my big goals for speaking for Esperanto is I want to get that up to 200 hours. So I'm doing anywhere from like about 20 to 30 minutes per day, just on working on my speaking skills. So once I get that to 200, I'll see where I'm at, and I'll see if I need to add like maybe like another 50 or 100 hours or so. But yeah, I'm feeling that out for now. So as far as the split between input and output, it's the advantage does go to the input part, so it's about 80-20, more or less. So 857 for input on 229 for output. And also the interactive free flow and preparation. So just to break this down really simply, interactive is a bit of an umbrella term, where it's when you're consuming content, but you're doing it in a way where you're trying to understand as much as possible every piece of content that you're going through. So ideally you would do this in front of a computer, where you can go and you could like look up words, and you could, maybe you could use like an AI explanation or something, but you're consuming the content in a way where you're making sure you're breaking everything down, and you're really trying to understand like what it is that you're consuming. Whereas with free flow, it's kind of like, it's like you're sitting back and you're watching TV, like you have your attention on the content, but you're not so much trying to like understand everything that you're watching. And preparation, this is basically anything that isn't free flow. So this is like I'm working on a language app. This could be like practicing your pronunciation. This could be like taking like a language class or something. So it's like stuff you do where you learn about the language, but you're not necessarily in the language, So it's ideal. You want to be doing a bit of both, and depending on which stage of your language learning journey you're on, like some things may be more important than others. Like maybe when you're just starting out, you might want to lean a little bit more on the preparation side of things. But once you become more advanced, you may want to focus a bit more on just like doing free flow, So it's really for each person, to decide. So that's it for Esperanto. So next we're going to go into Spanish. So Spanish here, I have 1,033 hours. I've been getting a little bit lazy. Like usually this was over 1 hour a day at one point, but kind of been slacking a little bit, But this is what I've been putting in for like the last like 60 days or so, So that's my current trend. It's the time per activity. So you can see here, like most of my time is focused on listening with like a little bit of reading. So I do want to up my reading more. Like that's one thing I definitely want to focus on for Spanish or French, is just getting in the habit of just reading, more stuff like in my target language. I actually really recently got LingQ, so I'm going to be using that, just to up my amount of reading. But yeah, that should definitely be a lot of fun. As you can see, I have my 959 hours of input. I'm really looking forward to hitting that first 1,000 hours, which, hopefully I should definitely hit that by next year, for sure. So I'm looking forward to hitting 1,000 hours. And this is how I have everything broken down between the interactive, the free flow, and the preparation. So mostly I'm free flow, but I do got some preparation, 163 and 133 for interactive. So moving on, last but not least, we're going to go over French. So French, this is a language that has most recently hit 1,000 hours. So you can see here about 1,000 hours, 7 minutes and change. So been putting in a little bit over an hour. So the thing is, I had actually hit 1,000 hours in Esperanto as well as Spanish first. So once I hit 1,000 hours in those languages, I decided that I wanted to focus a little bit more on French and try to get that to 1,000 hours as soon as possible. So I was trying to divert a little bit more time to that. So that's why, as you can see, the average is a bit higher with French as opposed to with Spanish. So I'm pretty happy about that. The work I was putting in definitely worth it. Like 1.5 here, 1.5, 1.3, etc. Like sometimes during the weekends, I do try to put in a little bit less time. Like especially if I have other things I don't want to work on. But for me, like I never let a day go by where I don't do anything in my target language, and I think that's a really good tip, to hold on to. Like, even if you only can do like, say, like one lesson on Duolingo, like doing something is always better than doing nothing. That's my opinion. Like, even if it's like the smallest thing, like do something that's so small you almost feel silly like not doing it. So that's just a little tip for you there. This is on the breakdown with the activities. Like I said, the half attention listening is a bit over. The proportion is a bit bigger than it should be. Like based on what I said before. Majority of my immersion has been listening, but I do want to focus a bit more on reading. 924 hours of input, and this is how I have it broken down with the interactive, the free flow, as well as preparation. So yeah, so that is everything in a nutshell. So just want to say that I'm really happy about where I'm at, especially with Esperanto. Like the fact that out of the 3 languages that I'm studying, I have the Esperanto language where I can go and I can use it for like speaking and for writing. And I feel like I just have this really cool interactiveness, like just being able to use it like as a part of my everyday life. Like that's one of the things I just love about Esperanto. So even though like I'm not quite at the point yet where I can go and I can use Spanish or French the same way I can use Esperanto, at least out of the 3 languages, I have one of them where I can go and I could be functional with it. So if you ever consider like learning, if you ever want to like experience like learning a language and being able to utilize a language, like relatively quickly, I mean, you really can't go wrong with Esperanto. I definitely recommend like looking more into it. Like I made a couple of videos on this channel about Esperanto, so definitely feel free to look into that. But yeah, if you have any additional questions for me as far as like my own language learning journey, like anything that I've learned, or if you have any questions about any of the stats I showed, definitely feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you enjoy videos like this, yeah, definitely please consider subscribing. I know I haven't been too active on here, but I have a few things I'm working on behind the scenes, but I definitely plan on making a lot more videos in the future. So this is Jacob Beguer. I'm signing off, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.